And you're live.
All right, we're back again, Senate Health and Welfare. It's still March 28th. It's still a Friday, and that's a good thing. So we're taking up page 238 and hearing from Representative Chapin, the reporter of the bill in the House. If you could just give us the reason why this bill is important, where it comes from, and a little bit of the information that you have as reported, that would be very helpful.
Sure, I can do that in just a few minutes, and then you can get a full walkthrough of my councils. Ella Chapin, for the record, I'm a member of the House Environment Committee, and I'm from Sunblair. I will sort of presume everybody's familiar with PFAS, unless you want me to back up and talk about what PFAS is.
Anybody need a PFAS update? I'm good with it. We're good.
Yeah, we did a lot of work on this past biennium, but not everybody was necessarily part of that. So we received, really this is coming from the Act 131, which we passed last year out of the legislature and went into effect in 2024, made a prohibition on a whole number of consumer products, that a prohibition against PFAS being in a whole slew of consumer products as a consumer protection bill last year. And at the same time, and did that through the consumer protection statutes. And PFAS has also been regulated within the Department of Health. But 131 not only did those prohibitions that we started in 2026, but also asked the Agency of Natural Resources to give the legislature a report back on what it would look like to have a full regulatory program based at ANR for PFAS in consumer products. And so we started off by hearing a little bit about the bill that ANR and ANR was asked to bring forth language of a bill that would do that, would move PFAS regulation for consumer products into ANR. So we looked at that start, and we heard from ANR, and we took a lot of testimony about the definition of PFAS and whether that stays broad or gets narrower depending on how you're regulating PFAS in consumer products. We took a lot of testimony also on the definition of intentionally added. You will hear a lot about that in this bill, and water sources with PFAS and how PFAS can get into consumer products. And we heard a variety of testimony from industries that are subject to the prohibitions that were under Act 131 and the additional products that we were looking at. So in the end, what we put forth is a bill that doesn't move all regulation of PFAS to ANR at this time, but instead adds several products to the list of prohibited products under the consumer protection statutes via the authority of the Attorney General, and leaves that there for the time being. I'd say that this bill is like a next logical step in what I explained to the whole House on the floor as sort of an iterative process as we learn more and as industries are starting to adapt and identify alternatives to PFAS on things like cookware and in cleaning products and in all in clothing and all kinds of outdoor waterproof kinds of materials. As we can evolve, as a legislature trying to take the next steps and push forward those changes to the extent that we can without losing critical products utilized by our society. So that's sort of what this bill does, and that's how I explained it to the whole House. So it does add 3 products that you'll hear about: dental floss, prohibition on PFAS and dental floss, in cleaning products, which is a pretty big category and an important one for human health, and coated containers that have PFAS in that, usually on the inside to prevent leaching and of things like gasoline. But we only did that prohibition not immediately, but in the next 2 years for the containers that contain the products that are on the prohibited list. And then there's a later date. You'll hear about these details probably going into the week.
We'll get totally confused. This is great.
So, I think that, we were trying to compromise and keep the definition of PFAS broad, because the science that we heard about is very clear about the entire category of PFAS chemicals. It is known to or is likely to based in our scientific understanding, have the kinds of effects on human health and the environment that we are already really clear are extensive, and that we really need to work collaboratively and across our entire society to get rid of the use of PFAS products, PFAS chemicals as broadly as possible. But it's a tricky thing. So that's what we put forward. We thought this was the next best step, but that we'll probably continue to be working on this, if not every year, fairly regularly over the coming decade or more. And so there's some very far out deadlines also for ANR to report back on what, there's only a couple states that have started full regulatory systems within their agencies of natural resource kind of entities. We want them to report back on some of those things, and then also how to get PFAS out food products, some other pieces in there. Main ones? Yes, and I think it's Minnesota. So those are pretty new regulatory systems. So we're looking to ANR to give us a report back in a number of years on how those programs are working. And then again, look at what it would look like to do that here at that point in time.
So it was the regional consortium that was working on this anyway, so.
Yeah, certainly ANR shared with us the great work they're doing with colleagues.
Yeah, we're leaders in this, aren't we? But I'll match up.
Yes, but other states are also doing various things with PFAS and consumer products. There's a really great grid out there that shows per product, per state, what date those bans go into place. So you can sort of see how many states are moving in a fairly similar direction.
You send that to Kiki, so thank you.
Yeah, I think some of your advocates can easily get that.
Yeah, we'll take testimony there.
That was a very helpful grant for us.
Questions for Representative Chapin? I do have a question. Do you want to go first or?
Mine is just a comment that I want to say thank you for bringing this forward. I am getting a lot of emails. A lot of my constituents are very plugged into this concern, and they're grateful that it is being taken up. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a good project to work on. We have committee work a lot, and we'll be ready to keep moving on this.
I just looked up the definition of PFAS, so now I know what it is.
Senator Douglas, go ahead.
Are any of the industries that use manufacturing, are they anyone arguing that like the health concerns for any PFAS are like overblown or incorrect or anything like that? Or are the industries acknowledging that there are health risks or PFAS, but it's just a matter of cost or transition to new products, or if it's on a longer timeline to transition to products? What's the industry saying?
I'd say some of all of that. I think the only industry we heard from are making an argument that PFAS health effects are not as some claim is from the cookware industry. And my understanding is that in the cookware industry, particularly if you're like Teflon coated pan, for example, or all of those coatings, not just Teflon, that have this
Stuff.
nice slick surface. My understanding is that if you use the pan correctly and you don't go too hot or you don't scratch the surface, then while you're using the pan, you're not necessarily likely to get a lot of PFAS into your body. But when we hear the science about the life cycle of the product, the production of the product, and the byproducts in the manufacturing process, the exposure to people in the manufacturing process who work in the manufacturing process, and then potential for misuse of those products and having scratched pans that people aren't aware can then be potential getting microplastics in their body, to then the disposal of these products and the very difficult place our society is in terms of managing disposal, which we're going to be doing for decades and decades, if not longer. We look at the life cycle of the product, then the health impacts and the environmental impacts really clear.
I use gas aggregators, so I don't.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Any other? Oh, yes, Senator Lyons has a question. So there was a section of the bill, probably this is a question more for Ledge Counsel O'Grady, but I see that the firefighter equipment has been struck. That's a question for you probably. And then did you, I'll save that question.
I don't think we made any changes.
Okay, okay.
There's a lot of
I think it's
rearranging.
probably rearranging.
There's a
That's
lot of
that-
rearranging.
Because I think there were some people saw that and went, oh, but I think it's really rearrangement.
Yeah.
And then the other question that I have, did you consider at all seeds coated with pesticides and seed coating or anything like that.
We did not really
Okay.
discuss that.
I know, we go to emails, yeah. A lot of emails about that.
Yes.
We need to know that. So, we'll sort out what we have to do in here, but
I would just mention back on the industry thing, we did move a couple of deadlines. And that's one place where we did make some adjustments to what had been done under Act 131
Yeah.
in response to industry testimony that the work to get the products, the use of PFAS out of those products was taking a little more time than the deadlines that were in Act 131 would allow, and to move product off the shelf and not have to lose any time in inventory. So we did respond to those requests directly in this bill.
Are you familiar with any other products that achieve similar effects?
We didn't get a lot of testimony specifically on that, except that many industries, particularly some of the larger industry players, are doing the R&D and are finding alternate products. Sometimes they're more costly, and that is a reality as we make some of these changes. But that many of the industries are finding those alternatives and doing that work.
one last question. What was the vote committee on your bill?
It was unanimous.
In the House then was that,
I was trying to, I meant to look that up this morning.
it's okay.
It was
It's here.
a very strong vote, if not
Okay.
virtually unanimous, but maybe somebody can look that up.
Okay. Question.
I'm gonna mind, sorry.
No, you're not.
Agricultural applications.
We really didn't get into that because
I didn't hear your question. So-
I said agricultural applications.
Right,
I'm not
no,
talking about
that's the
seed.
pesticide.
I'm not just talking about seeds, I'm talking about like uses in equipment.
Yeah,
Or anything to do with agriculture or then even other vehicles or.
we kept very narrow to consumer products and the items that ANR had brought forth as the next items to consider.
so more of the direct effect that on human health and the environment.
There are
Except
definitely,
for agriculture.
there are a lot of other ways, and we have other bills on our wall, as you may, on sort of PFAS in water, PFAS and pesticides.
Yeah.
So I think this was more narrowly on the consumer protection statutes piece.
Good, thank you. A lot of good work here. And so now you are now our resident expert. Will be staying connected. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Good luck on the floor. Thanks. So, Michael. I think this is the first time you've been in here in a while.
In a while.
I
Yeah.
know.
I was gonna ask you, put the bill on the screen, because I don't know, because I haven't been here in a while.
I know.
You want the bill on?
Yes, that would be helpful. And I actually I had asked Katie to draft me a bill on the same topic and keep it in Department of Health. And then I said, this is ridiculous. Act 131 came out with recommendations, so let the House go forward and we've got it now, so it's great.
It's loading very slowly.
Yeah, that happens and you're in the,
I couldn't get on.
is that right today?
Internet, so it may be a problem. Can you get on the internet? Yeah. Can you? Yes. I not share my screen into the live stream.
No, that's okay.
It is posted on the wall.
We have it. We have the bill in front of us. We have a written copy and we also have a screen copy.
Getting there.
Okay. Patience.
It's gonna make potential for really bad noise. Now I got it.
You have time. Oh, look at that. It's actually, it's getting some 33 degrees.
Here we go.
Yeah,
Okay,
perfect.
So before I start walking through the bill, I want to maybe repeat some of what Representative Chapin said, to provide a little bit more context about why you have what's in front of you. As you know, last year in Act 131, you enacted significant restrictions on PFAS in specific consumer products. Because as part of that bill, you required A&R to propose a program to identify and restrict the distribution of consumer products containing PFAS, basically going into the future, not just based on specific consumer products, but PFAS in any consumer product. The agency came back with a report, Act 131. That report had two components. It had very similar to what you have been doing. It had the first component, which would have regulated PFAS in specific consumer products. And it included 3 new products, cleaners, dental floss, and fluorine treated containers. But it had a second component, which was the more comprehensive regulation of PFAS in any consumer product. But it was a contingency. It had a contingent effective date of when states with in the Northeast with 15 million people or more adopted similar legislation. But as part of their proposal, they came back with a definition of PFAS that was different from the usual definition that the General Assembly has been using over the past few years. And that definition, the traditional definition, means that PFAS means a class of fluorinated organic chemicals containing at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom. As an alternative, the agency offered you this. I can't even say it. They define PFAS as 3 chemical structures. This is based off of a federal TSCA rule, but it would have limited the scope of products because it would have limited the type of PFAS chemicals that would have been regulated. The committee upstairs, House Environment, they discussed whether or not to limit it the way that A&R proposed so that there could be, and A&R proposed this because of their anxiety of running a regulatory program that was based on the broader definition.
Yeah.
How big of a universe of products would you be dealing with for any fluorinated compound to be in any consumer product? So they had an anxiety about that. They wanted it to basically form a universe that could be known, as opposed to one where they didn't know the limits. And so, but the committee upstairs wanted that traditional definition. They wanted that broader application and the health protection that it provided. And so they proposed to move the A&R regulatory program to one based on the broader definition. A&R came in and said, we can't do that. And said, instead of the regulatory program, we propose that you continue with what you had proposed in Act 131, regulating specific products with the broad definition of PFAS. When that broad definition of PFAS is in a specific consumer product, then it would be prohibited. The authority to run the program would remain with the Attorney General and under her consumer protection authority. So that would not be the traditional regulatory program where you have an agency that's doing proactive assessment of products. It's consumer protection is usually a complaint-driven process where the Attorney General is responding to something and using her authority then. So you have a distinction between the two, but you still have that traditional definition of PFAS. The agency did recommend that you still include those new products, the dental floss, the cleansers, and the fluorine treated containers. But when I went to amend what you did, the chapter that you amended or added in Title IX last year,
Yeah.
there are literally no sections left in that chapter. I would have had to have redesignated multiple subchapters after this chapter in order to create room to put the 3 new products in, because last year in Act 131, each specific consumer product with PFAS in it that was going to be regulated had its own section. So there were 10 sections, and those 10 sections took up all of the space that was left in that chapter. So when talking with Jen Carby, she said you have to redesignate all of those and create sections that were like 2494 or ZZZ. Or you condense what you did in Act 131 last year, not changing the substance, but putting the prohibitions all in or mainly in one section. So that
Still Title IX.
still Title IX,
Okay.
still same chapter, still same subchapter, still same substantive requirements with some minor changes to the effective dates, but all condensed so that I didn't have to restructure an entire chapter. And that's why it looks like things are being struck
Got it.
when there aren't actually being struck. So with that,
Thank you for that explanation.
I will go through the substance of the bill. You will see you are in Title IX, Chapter 63, Chapter 12A, PFAS and consumer products. There are definitions that were added in Act 131, and some of which are just being transferred from Title 18. There is that definition of apparel and that definition of outdoor apparel that does change in the future date to bring in those outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions. Then there's the definition of cleaning product, a compound intended for routine cleaning, including general purpose cleaners, bathroom cleaners, bath cleaners, carpet cleaners, or care products and hand soaps. It does not mean an antimicrobial pesticide. There's a definition of dental floss. It's a string-like device made of cotton or other fibers intended to remove flat and food particles between the teeth to reduce tooth decay. May be coated with wax for easier use. And then the definition of fluorine treated container is a fluoridated treated plastic container. You'll see a lot of the definitions from the products you included last year, such as incontinency products and juvenile products, etc. But H 238 does amend the definition of intentionally added as Representative David noted earlier. One of the discussions in the House environment was if PFAS is somehow resulting in the final product due to the manufacturing process and the equipment used, and whether or not that should be contemplated as intentionally added. And so there was that change to definition of intentionally added. It's the addition of a chemical in a chemical product that serves an intended function in the manufacturing. So it's being used in the manufacturing process for an intended function, where it's in the final product. So it's intended to have a function in the manufacturing product or intended to have a function in the final product, and it results in PFAS in the final product. So if you have a piece of equipment that somehow has PFAS and it's molding, etc., but it doesn't result in PFAS in the final product, that's not intentionally added. It has to have been resulting in PFAS in the final product. And it must be known or reasonably ascertainable by the manufacturer. And that's a definition that we will review in a minute.
Can I ask a question? Should it be?
Let's wait till the end of the definition and then you can ask.
Okay.
Unless it's one of understanding.
It's about this definition, but I'll wait until we.
Let's finish, let Michael go through the rest of it, tack together and then.
One of the other issues that the House Environment Committee addressed was when PFAS is present in a product because water was used in the the production of the product or the processing of the product or in some other way in the processing. PFAS is in water, it's in well water, it's in public water. The committee didn't want to trigger the regulatory requirements just because someone was using water that is just generally available. And so there was the language on line 8 through 11, PFAS shall not be considered intentionally added if the chemical is present in the product due to use of water containing PFAS. And the manufacturer took no action that resulted in the PFAS being present in the water. So they're not adding a processing agent to the water and then somehow escaping regulations underneath the subchapter.
Kind of raises the question about a manufacturer who's out of state and how do we know that this out of state water contains PFAS?
Well, I mean, the Attorney General's authority underneath consumer protection is largely reliant on her ability to request certificates of compliance. To say to a manufacturer, show me that you are complying with this law, show me that your product doesn't have PFAS in it, or show me that the PFAS is present because of the use of water. And that would be the regulatory tool she would use to do that.
I think you've answered my question, but just to drive it home, I'm obsessed with the fact that a lot of seltzer brands have PFAS in them, and I've been doing a little bit of research, not much, but this one doesn't have PFAS, but some that do, it seems that it's coming because of the water that it used from the very beginning. If they didn't treat it or whatever, remove the PFAS from the water, and or it's in the manufacturing equipment and or the container that it's in. So if this would not be covered here,
Well, remember,
not intentional.
when we get into the substance of the bill, these are just the prohibitions are in specific products.
Right.
And so seltzer currently is not a specific product. There is a report in the bill on how to, from the Agency of Agriculture, on how to address PFAS in food, which seltzer is food.
Yeah.
And that report would come to you. It's not coming to you until 2033.
Okay.
But that's because
Go keep going. Sorry.
I will tell you why it's.
Okay, I know.
33 and amendment.
Okay, but even if seltzer were in the bill, it still wouldn't fall under this definition because it's
Right,
not being intentionally added.
You would have to have shown that
Yeah.
that it was the source of something other than water. I do think when you start to address food and presence of PFAS in food, you're probably going to have to revisit how if water is something you want to regulate for that purpose. I don't know how you would discern the presence of the PFAS from water or another source in food. I don't know how that would be.
Right?
I'm scientist.
Sounds complicated. All right, thank you.
Okay, so, and a related question, I know that Montpelier has been working on the removal of PFAS from the wastewater and doing that pilot. And I think it's also happening with leachate in the big landfill, or at least looking at that. Did they do any testimony on that, on the pilot program, or I don't know where it is right now, so I don't know whether it's in hiatus or.
From what I know,
Okay,
the effort to establish a drinking water standard for PFAS is ongoing. And similarly, the effort for a surface water quality standard for PFAS is ongoing. Someone referenced Matt Chapman earlier. He is working with the regional consortium to try to find a common standard for both of those. As to the landfill, they had the pilot project they were implementing. I don't want to state what I think the status of that is because it has changed relatively quickly and I don't want to say anything that's.
Well, sort of, yeah. It is peripheral, but not peripheral, yeah. Okay, thank you.
There's a definition of juvenile product that you added last year. There's one change in this definition. They wanted to include pacifiers because they learned that there might be PFAS and pacifiers, and they wanted that to be specifically added, even though it's an including list, which would have already included pacifiers, but they wanted the specific reference. Then there's the definition of known or reasonably ascertainable. It's all information in a person's possession or control. It's all information that a reasonable person similarly situated might be expected to possess control.
So going back to the kids stuff, juvenile products, is there any, don't need to answer this now, but something maybe we have, but relationship between our children's products, toxic chemicals and children's products?
Right.
I mean, that's in what? I forgot where it is, 10 VSA 1775, or I forgot where it is.
It's Title 18.
Title 18.
It's run by the Department of Health. For those that don't know, it's a requirement that persons selling products marketed for. It is under 12 years old, if I recollect correctly.
Yeah.
And it has one of many chemicals in it. The list is fairly long. And the department can add chemicals to the list, add or subtract.
Right.
It is not a prohibition though. It is a notice.
Yeah.
It's a requirement that the manufacturer provide notice that the chemical is in the product. That product is then listed on a database that the Department of Health maintains.
You need to register.
I don't think PFAS is on
I don't think
the
so.
list.
No. This is probably a stronger,
And because of the broad definition
Yeah.
of PFAS, it takes in many different variants of the fluorinated chemical. So it's not just one specific chemical that was listed 20, whatever, 15 or 16. That was. So should I move on?
please, yeah.
There is a definition. Actually, let's see the definition. I do want to note that for the definition of textiles, and the outdoor apparel, the effective dates of those are similarly the same as Act 131. There were some requests to push out for outdoor apparel. The regulated PFAS moving from 100 parts per million in textiles down to 50 parts per million. That remains the same. And you will see that in just 1 minute. So moving on, page 7, line 6, this is the new section that lists all of or most of the consumer products with PFAS in it that will be prohibited. They are no longer each listed in their own section. So you will see a manufacturer shall not manufacture, sell, offer for sale, distribute for sale, or distribute for use in the state following consumer products to which PFAS have been intentionally added in any amount. So the aftermarket stain and water resistant, artificial turf, cleaning products, cookware, dental floss, incontinency products, juvenile products. It says rugs and carpets, but actually Act 131 was residential rugs and carpets. So I think you're going to be consistent with 131. This was brought to my attention after 238 passed the House. It should say residential rugs and carpets for consistency with Act 131. Also includes ski wax. Then there's the provision that for textiles, manufacturer shall not manufacture, sell, offer for sale, distribute for sale distributed for use in the state textiles or textile articles which are regulated PFAS have been intentionally added. Textiles, you do allow a certain amount of intentionally added PFAS in them. It starts out at 100 parts per million, and then you phase down to 50 parts per million. But that's why they're separate from subsection A, because they do actually have PFAS in them. And then subsection C, this is the subsection that provides that the prohibitions do not apply to sale, offer for sale, distribution of used products. And then you get that language that's striking all those sections that you just listed in 2494. So you see, for example, juvenile products, there's the ban, and then it doesn't apply to used products. Rugs and carpets, you'll see that there's the ban on their use in residential rugs or carpets, and then there's the allowance of the sale or resale of used products, ski wax, textile, all that repetitive provisions, they're all now consolidated in 2494 Act.
Where was the firefighter equipment? Is that the
Firefighter equipment,
firefighters contacted me about that?
it is not changed. That is in a separate subchapter of law that is not amended by this.
Okay, which chat? Where is it? Is it in Title IX or in Title?
It's going to be in Title IX.
It's going
It
to
won't
be.
be in Title IX until 2026.
Okay, that's all we need to know. It's not, it hasn't been obliterated.
No,
Okay.
it has not been obliterated.
That's probably a heavy word. Let's say excluded, but taken out. That's why it's getting good.
So it is 9 VSA chapter 63, subchapter 12B,
And that's Title IX,
29, Title 9, chapter 63,
60,
60.
Yep.
63,
yes.
subchapter 12B. And this bill only amends subchapter 12A.
Got it. That'll solve a lot of angst. Thank you.
So one of the new products being regulated is fluorine treated containers, those with fluorinated composition. Manufacturer shall not sell, offer for sale, distribute for sale, or distribute for use in the state of product. That's one of those that was listed in 2494 A1 through 9. It does not contain an intentionally added PFAS, but it's sold in a container that is a fluorine treated container. So your cleaning product is PFAS free, but you put it into a fluorine treated container, that is prohibited. And that is because of the concern that the PFAS can leach from the container into the product itself. Then there's a second component that Rep. Chapin noted, the prohibition. Well, let's go to sub C. Beginning on January 1, 2030, manufacturer shall not manufacture, sell, offer for sale, distribute, or distribute for use a fluorine treated container or any consumer product in a fluorine treated container. So the fluorine product, which we just discussed, the PFAS-free product in a fluorine treated container, that's banned. But the fluorine treated container itself is being sold as a separate product, that is banned as well. Your gas can, some of the just stuff that Home Depot to put your stuff in, like I can't remember. Yeah, buckets.
Buckets.
What's that brand that makes that stuff? That would be prohibited. Rubbermaid.
What is it?
Rubbermaid.
Oh,
If they're selling containers that are fluorinated, that would be prohibited. Now, the committee recognized that there are some containers that might be necessary to have fluorinated compounds in them, just like you recognize that for the firefighting equipment last year, that there weren't suitable alternatives for firefighting equipment. So what the committee did is they gave the Attorney General the authority by rule to allow for the sale, distribution, et cetera, of a consumer product prohibited under subsection A, or of a fluorine treated container that would be prohibited on a determination that the use of PFAS in the consumer product or in the container is a currently unavoidable use. And then there's a definition of what is currently unavoidable. It's the use of PFAS. It's essential for health, safety, or the functioning of society, for which an alternative is not reasonably available. I will note they did discuss that the functioning of society is a pretty broad standard.
depends on who you are, right?
They did base it on another state with the same standard. They discussed whether to narrow it or not, but they ultimately determined to leave that to the Attorney General's rulemaking discretion. Rulemaking, remember, is a very public process with a lot of public comment and input. There will be some discretion for the Attorney General in her rulemaking to determine what that means for purposes of this.
They didn't put any criteria at all, but there was a discussion about potential criteria. May want to talk with a reporter again.
You could look at what A&R produced, because they had currently unavoidable in their Act 131 report,
Okay.
and they defined what that was for the purposes of that regulatory program. And I'm gonna just have to find it.
So Kiki will put that report up on our webpage so we can look at it. I think we already have it, but we'll put it up contemporaneously with what we're doing here.
I'm not finding currently unavoidable.
No, we'll find.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know.
But just some,
Okay, it's the product or product component, if unavailable, would result in a significant increase in negative health or care outcomes and an inability to mitigate significant risk to human health or the environment, or significantly interrupt the daily functions on which society relies. So that's an alternative that you would have to currently unavoidable standard.
All right, interesting.
So moving on here into 2494H, which is the Attorney General's enforcement authority. I referenced earlier how this is an important enforcement tool for her. She can request a certificate of compliance with the subchapter, give people time to determine if PFAS is in their product, the course of it, to get certification from their subcontractors as well, suppliers. That is not changing. It's just having a different section number. Violations is also not changing. The penalties. The violation of the subchapter is the violation of section 2453 of Title IX. That's the general consumer protection penalty section. It is both a authority for the Attorney General to seek civil penalties, but it's also the authority for an individual who is harmed by a consumer offense, consumer protection offense, to sue for treble damages. And then section 2, this is where you are seeing changes from Act 131 to definitions that were prospective changes. For example, in regulated PFAS, you're moving from the 100 parts per million to the 50 parts per million standard for textiles, and that goes into effect July 1, 2027. Section 3 is the change to the definition of apparel from Act 131, adding that outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions as a category of apparel, and that goes into effect July 1, 2028. And
28, you said?
28, yeah. And then section 4 of the A&R report on PFAS regulation, Representative Chapin references earlier, there are other states with regulatory programs. Those regulatory programs are based on that broader definition of PFAS. This section would have A&R report back on how those programs are doing. So on page 14, 10 to 12, a summary of the programs in the other states, whether they've had, whether they have implemented the program based on the definition of PFAS used in the section, the broad definition. Other states have implemented a regulatory program, a summary of how they're doing, including any obstacles, difficulties in implementation, staffing, time frame, recommendation based on those other states, about where a regulatory program should be located, such as what agency, the staffing required, time frame, cost, and any other information the secretary determines necessary.
Is there a reason they put it out to 2027 for that report back?
So one of the things, the regulatory programs in other states are new. And they wanted to give some time for implementation of those programs to be able to collect information that's viable for analyzing how the client Vermont.
Do we know how many of those states are New England states beside Maine? Is there anything going on in Maine, Massachusetts?
It's really Maine and Minnesota. There are efforts being made in other states, Rhode Island, as an example.
Yeah,
But the two states that are at the vanguard, I would say, would be Maine and Minnesota.
we'll let them spend the money first, right?
Well, that's kind of A&R's point. It's like, they do have an anxiety about running a regulatory program based on broad definition. And I don't blame them. They just, so, section 5 are 2 additional reports. One is a report from A&R on a recommendation on how to address PFAS and complex durable goods. Complex durable goods are consumer products that are manufactured or goods composed of 100 or more manufactured components with an intended useful life of 5 or more years. And so imagine trying to determine where PFAS might be in those products and how and when to limit them or phase them out. And so there are efforts being made in other states to review how to determine or regulate these products. It's January 15th, 2033, because that's when those other states, those other efforts are going to be available. The committee asked A&R, what if we move that date to 2029? And I think Matt Chapman's response was, well, the report would be, I don't have enough information until 2033. So
Some of us might be under the ground by then, right?
let's hope not. Let's exactly. But then you have a similar report from the Agency of Agriculture there on page 15, line 16, on how to regulate or address PFAS in food. There was that same timing response from the agency. They won't have enough information to provide the report until 2033. And then section 6, it's repealing provisions from Act 131 because they're in this bill now. So everything, I don't want multiple different bills addressing consumer PFAS and consumer products. Everything's now in H238. With regard to PFAS and consumer products, PFAS and firefighting equipment, PFAS and medical products, that's unchanged. They remain unchanged. Section 7 is just a conforming amendment to the Act 131 effective date. And then Section 8 are the effective dates for this act. The bill as a whole and the reports take effect July 1, 2025. The PFAS and consumer products takes effect on January 1, 2026, which was the effective date from Act 131. Except that the new products, cleaning products, dental floss, and fluoride treated containers, they get 2 years, like you gave 2 years to all consumer products in Act 131. And then for cookware, they gave them an additional year. They pushed cookware out to 2028. The effective dates and the substance of this act shall supersede any provisions of Act 131 that conflict with this act. I don't believe there will be any conflicts, but if there are, this act will supersede. Section 2, the definition of regulated PFAS for the purposes of textiles takes effect July 1, 2027. The definition of outdoor apparel, adding the wet equipment, takes effect July 1, 2028. The repeal of the Act 131 provisions, they take effect January 1, 2026. And that is the bill.
So you did a lot of work on this bill. I mean, the fact is you restructured a lot.
It would have been a lot easier if I could just have added 3 new sections, right?
Yeah,
But I didn't, literally, there was no. So first time we've had that issue. It probably means that Title IX needs to be republished and restructured. But that's a task for somebody else.
thank you for all your work on this. I don't know that everyone can appreciate, but I'm starting to appreciate the heavy lift here. Thank you very much. So, hold on, are there any questions for you first? Before you make sure everyone has some clarity on what is in the bill. Any questions for Michael? Okay,
And exit the ship.
thank you.
The comfy chair?
Yeah. Wow. A lot. So I know there are people in the room who are dying to testify on the bill and, you can do that. We'll have you sign up with Kiki and then we'll hear your testimony. So just, you're here now, so I'm looking at everyone who's here. And just give us a sort of a short preview of what we might hear from you. That would be very helpful. So I know we never know what's coming. You go ahead.
From the silence or?
Well, just from where you are, just your name, just, you know, for purposes of the record, just state who you are and who you represent, and then we'll just go around the room very briefly.
Sure. Well, I'm Driscoll with Associated Industries Vermont, representing the manufacturing sector. What do you want to say about that?
All right.
We have, I think, several very reasonable requests for further evolution of the bill. I think will be
Okay,
hopefully.
thank you.
Paul Burns, I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Public Interest Research Group, or VPIR. And we are largely supportive of the bill that has come out of the House. There's been a lot of compromise that has already gone into the version that you heard just now. And so we recognize that hard work and I have a few more thoughts, but again, largely positive about this direction.
Okay. So there doesn't sound like there's still conflict.
We're in a close agreement here.
That's good. Go ahead.
Jill Satoff-Garin. I represent the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance on this, and they are largely supportive of what came out of the House. And we support the changes of the effective date because that allows us to sell down the products that we have.
We'll get to this. This is good. All right, next.
If I'm not going to be testifying, do I have to share?
No, no, you don't.
I
But,
won't be testifying.
okay, but if you're gonna ambush us after we finish the bill, then you can.
I won't. I will be as quiet as a mouse.
All right, that's great.
Everyone, Anna Suberling, also with the Vermont Public Interest Research Group. Again, finally.
Thank you.
Hi, Madam Chair. So Chris Newby with the Professional Firefighters of Vermont.
Oh, good. So we hit
I've
your
been
issue.
because we do. So there's this a bill out there, H-250, that never moved, and I believe Ashley spoke with you on this.
Yes, that's right.
So we're hoping we can fold that into this,
Okay.
and it deals with firefighter protective equipment. It's always been exempted.
So
There's
we'll
been a
bring
big-
you in.
What's that?
We'll bring you in.
I hope so. And like, if you, I would ask this respectfully that, if we could have like a separate day with the firefighters, they're gonna bring in people from the IFF,
Okay,
major organization at the federal level.
okay.
They can give us a lot better view of the true science out there, because they're all gonna say the gear is not as safe when that's, excuse my French,
So,
bullshit.
yeah.
There's safe stuff out there. But we can show you there's a direct connection between PFAS and cancers in the fire service.
Yes.
And that while fires are going down, cancers are going up. And we're tying it to the year. We're trying on a national level to get legislation, but we know federally not gonna see much in the next 4 years, unfortunately. So
Thank you. So we'll have, so please sign up
I will,
with Kiki and we'll
I'll send her.
sort out, how to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you say there's another bill that you want to bring in here.
So, yeah, H-250, which would have banned it, models what they've done in Mass and Connecticut. Where it
Well,
phases
we'll
out.
get to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
don't
it
give it
labels
too
it,
much
then
now.
2 years where
If you give it too much now, it'll go in one ear and out the other, but we'll have, Michael, is that your bill, H-250 or?
No,
No,
I believe Katie's got it up.
we don't have it. I don't, who did it?
It didn't.
It didn't come out.
It sent.
All right, well, we'll look at the issue that is embedded in there, as it relates to our work on PFAS. This is,
Really appreciate that, Madam Chair.
yeah, no problem. And so each one of you, please sign up with Kiki and we are going to be spending time on this bill. It's critically important to keep going on PFAS. I don't know how we get it out of our systems. Just think of all the systems it's embedded in, it forever. But we don't want it to continue and escalate, increase it. Well, that's good. Thank you all. Good day. And I just want to say again, thank you to my committee for the really good work that you have done on S-126, and the House is taking that bill up in House Healthcare. We look forward to what they're hopefully doing to improve it. So we are adjourned for the day. Thank you.